Welcome back to Forever Young. I'm Ann Bratsburg. This is Eric Johnson and Polly Wilson, and we are at the Health Hut. You are watching Living Green programming, and Eric and Polly and the Health Hut sponsors this programming. All of the shows you see under Living Green and on the website are brought to you by them in part. And before we left the break, we were talking about why people are having such intolerances to foods. We're giving different theories and ideas we have, because I was asking Eric and Polly, why is it that you need to cater to such special diets? How come everybody is becoming gluten-free? You heard a lot about people being dairy intolerant, but you didn't hear the gluten-free until very recently, the last few years. You know, you didn't hear it 15 years ago. You'd heard about lactose. It existed,
but it was a lot less.
Yeah, a lot less. And you always hear about lactose intolerance, but now it's multiple. It's gluten-free, and oftentimes you're finding that when a person is gluten-free, they're also dairy intolerant, and some often egg intolerant, and something that...
And a lot of times they're actually corn intolerant, peanut intolerant, and sometimes soy intolerant.
Yeah. You know, and it's amazing. It's not just naturopaths saying this. I know that when I was first diagnosed with intolerance to dairy and eggs, it was more of a naturopathic doctor that got me on the track, but I started to discover more. I was having more trouble. I did well for several years, and then it was actually an MD who said, you need to leave wheat alone and see how you feel. Well, that helped a tremendous amount. And MDs are really, you know, they're all on the bandwagon now with this because it's so prevalent. And we were talking
I told you several times, wheat, dairy and soya. I mean, dairy and wheat are the two most common allergens.
You did.
You didn't really listen to the wheat part, and I didn't really stress it. So.
No, because I liked wheat. I still do, but I can't have it. But it's interesting because I was asking you guys how you thought the bodies became this way, and then you brought up some interesting stories on the break. We were talking about additives and preservatives and hormones and such, and you were talking about margarine and Twinkies. Tell me about the margarine.
Well, there's a lot of foods that are so artificial that people have been eating. I mean, for example, hydrogenated oils were introduced into, and I think about 1913 or something.
Oh, wow.
As when the first technology to create hydrogenated or stabilized oils so they don't go rancid to create a packaged food, you know. Mm-hmm. Like the grocery store of today is filled with packaged foods. Well, these are all packaged foods. But hopefully they don't have any man-made fats in there. Mm-hmm. But they developed we have hydrogenating fats, and they developed artificial butter called margarine and oleo, they used to call it. Mm-hmm. Well, during the war, a lot of the butter and the meat and stuff for cows was going to the war effort, and so that's when they really came out big with margarine. Mm-hmm. And before margarine, hydrogenated oils were introduced, the cancer rate was a fraction of what it is today. Wow! And they can literally see when they introduced margarine and those kind of man-made hydrogenated fats into the food supply, the cancer rate just literally went straight up. Right through the roof. And there's almost a direct correlation between the use of margarine and the cancer rate. They almost track almost perfectly.
Well, tell me about the margarine on the internet. This was something.
I was listening to it was a TV show that was just replaying it on the internet because I had missed the actual TV show on the television. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about they found on the steps in somebody's garage, they found a package of unopened margarine. It was a block. It was a 1 pound block of margarine, and it was dated from 1936. Wow! I'm not sure exactly how they knew exactly what year it was from, but it had a price sticker on it and everything. Uh-huh. And they found it in the 1960s. And so somebody preserved it, and it's still around today.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
It is unchanged. Like there's nothing wrong with it. It's got a little bit of dirt on the top of the packaging, but inside, I mean, when they unwrap it, they unwrap it and they wrap it back up again. The box is deteriorating, but the margarine itself is not deteriorating whatsoever.
Isn't that a little bit scary?
The color is faded. The color is a little bit pale. But other than that, the margarine, it actually still smells like margarine. After how many years is that? 70 years. 80 years.
You know, I got to tell you something that's sort of similar to that. When I became dairy intolerant, and I still thought I could eat wheat, and I was out in the stores, and I was getting cream-filled lemon cookies and cream-filled chocolate cookies, you know, the sandwich cookies that you get. And I was all excited because they didn't have dairy in them. And then I got to thinking, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is called a cream-filled sandwich cookie, and in the ingredients there was no dairy whatsoever, no cream, no milk. And I'm like, what is the cream?
Yeah, what is the
chemicals
cream?
And oil and hydrogenated fat and wow.
Yeah.
What about the Twinkie, Polly?
Oh, yeah, there's a story of, I think down in Florida, there's somebody that has this 15, 20-year-old Twinkie. I think it's maybe up to 20 years. But every year they bring it to this natural festival, and I don't remember what the festival was. It's a natural product industry type festival, and they bring this Twinkie and they put it on display. Every year it's the same Twinkie, and it looks the same as the day they bought it. Wow. And it's as old as...
And I know that there's also a lady on YouTube who bought a hamburger and fries from one of the major fast food places, and I think it's now 6 years old, and it still looks just like almost like the day she bought it.
No kidding.
And it's not molded, it's not deteriorated.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and actually you can find it on YouTube. You just find like 6-year-old hamburger and French fries, or.
That is entirely amazing,
and it still smells. The French fries still smell like French fries, and they look fine. Like they're not molded.
Oh, boy.
They look pretty good. They look like they're maybe a week old or something, but they're actually 6 years. I believe they're 6 years old. I could have the date wrong.
Oh.
But the hamburger still looks like a hamburger. You can still see the cheese on it, and the ketchup and the pickle and everything. And it looks pretty good. You
know what's scary about that, is just the idea that, I remember even my husband telling me when he was in the Vietnam wartime, and their sea rations came out of the 40s, and he said you'd open them and they were the same. Everything was fine, and it scares you. You start to think on it. Wait a minute, the same chemicals that can preserve that food, what can they do to our system? It just doesn't feel quite right.
Something goes into the
body doesn't know what to do with this fake food. I mean, this Franken food, it just doesn't know how to deal with it.
I like that, Franken food. Well, the reason I went into this was simply to try to go under the question of why is it that we're needing to cater to so many special diets? Why is everybody so intolerant? One of the simplistic views that I kind of thought of here was if we just, instead of even tearing down into the surface, think about, and here I'm going to date myself a little. I'm not giving you guys a number, but we're all around the same age, but they're older than me. But remember, guys, when we were kids, people ate more at home together, and it was more. I remember my mom cooked a lot of meals from scratch. You didn't have the boxed meals that you have now. And it's funny. I tease. I have some young editors that work for us, and I ask these guys, how often do you eat vegetables? I mean, guys, there's weeks that can go by and these kids don't eat vegetables. And I'm thinking, when I was a kid, remember how, you got to eat your broccoli or you got to eat your peas, and they would, but we ate something every day, and fruits, and we had, even if it was meat, it was usually home cooked, and you didn't have all the box eating.
Well, that's what I did with my kids when I started to study the raw. I started basically with putting in. I forced myself to put in 2 raw things in every meal for the kids. Like we would, we ate a lot of meals at home, and that was important. Like you say, that probably doesn't happen as often as it should in America. And I would put even if it was like a cut up an apple and a couple of baby carrots. I just put it out on a plate, and it was offered.
So they always had something living.
So they could choose to eat this raw, whatever it was.
Do they tend to be more health conscious?
Yeah, my kids are very health conscious. Yeah.
And it makes you see how tough our bodies are, because if you think about it, we've got this generation coming up now. I mean, the baby boomers, it's proven the baby boomers are living longer. But if you think about it, they were raised to eat healthy. This generation under ours is scary, because you're seeing kids in their 30s, 20s and 30s.
I wouldn't go so far as to say they were raised to eat healthy, but they were healthier than our current.
Exactly. Well, you think about the kids now, in their 30s having heart attacks.
I know.
Look at the diabetes rate, the childhood obesity rate. I was just watching the news today, and they said it's huge.
Yeah, it's bad.
I mean, it's epidemic practically. It really is, with childhood obesity. And why is it? Well, think about it. I mean, how are we feeding our kids?
Well, we'll go to break and we'll talk about that. We'll get more into like how they've made foods more addictive, I think.
Exactly, and also the solutions, which are sitting in front of us. We'll talk a little bit about that, and maybe give some ideas on some things to introduce to your kids, and if you're on a special diet, some of the products that are made available. So I'm Ann, Eric, Holly, Health Hut, watching DSE-TV 97 on Comcast, dseTV.com, or DSE-TV Muskegon on YouTube, and we'll be back in just a moment.